Arpit and I'm here with today's analysis. Today is 1st of May and we are going to deal with two very important topics which are in news. The first is the eggshell skull principle. This is a legal principle which was adopted for the very first time in the USA and now it is adopted worldwide. What is this principle? We will understand through an example. Now let's suppose someone comes and beats you. You already have a pre-existing medical condition. By that beating of that person, you get some bruises on your skin and your pre-existing medical conditions gets aggravated. Now, will that person be punishable for only those bruises which he caused or due to that aggravated medical condition also? Well, according to this eggshell skull principle, that person will be punishable for both, that is the bruises as well as the pre-existing medical condition which got aggravated. India also follows this principle in law and a case was there in the Supreme Court with respect to this principle. Next is expanded program on immunization. This program was adopted by the WHO in the year 1974. We are celebrating 50 years of its completion in 2024. Now, after the adoption of this program, various countries all across the world adopted their respective national immunization programs. Like India in 1978 adopted this. India's immunization program was renamed in the year 1985 as Universal Immunization Program. Immunization has played a very crucial role in, I would say, enhancing the quality of life of the people. Vaccine preventable diseases are now not so common. The out-of-pocket expenditure of the people, which they frequently spent on hospital visits or hospitalizations, have reduced. The workforce is more productive and healthy. But apart from it, there are multiple challenges also, like vaccine hesitancy, this false perception that vaccine is only for the children, not for the adults. Now, these challenges have to be overcome if we have to truly achieve universalization in immunization. Then only we will be, a healthy workforce and a developed country, which we dream of becoming by 2047. Now, let's get started with the first topic, that is the eggshell skull principle. Now, there was a lady, who got operated for her appendicitis, and those appendicitis was removed. She was suffering pain before that, but when the appendicitis was removed, the pain continued. It did not subside. She approached other hospitals, and then, when she approached PGI Chandigarh, they discovered that a needle was left inside her stomach while she was getting operated for removal of the appendicitis. That needle was removed, her health improved, but she filed cases in the district courts for consumers. District courts did give compensation in her favor. The state courts and the national courts reduced that compensation. All these courts were taking into account the eggshell skull principle. Supreme Court said that they were wrongly undertaking the eggshell skull principle and enhanced the compensation amount. Now, why they were wrongly undertaking this, we will see to this. But you've understood this scenario, that why this was in news, the eggshell skull principle. But yes, what is the eggshell skull principle? It is a common law principle applied in civil litigation when the offender would be liable for all injuries that might be intensified due to the peculiar conditions of the injured person that the offender might not have known. So let's suppose someone comes and beats me. I am having, let's suppose, migraine problem. So when that person beats me up, I get bruises on my skin, but my migraine aggravates. So that person will be punishable not only for those bruises, but for my aggravated migraine, which was a pre-existing condition. This is what this eggshell skull rule says. Simply put, the defendant would be held responsible for injuries caused to a person when he hit him on the head, even if the victim had particularly delicate skull or an eggshell for a skull. The rule is applied for claiming an enhanced compensation for damage that is more than what could have been ordinarily anticipated to caused by the defendant. Now, ordinarily, that person hit me, I could only get bruises. But due to that fight, my migraine got aggravated. So defendant was not aware about it, but now the defendant will have to bear the consequences of that as well. Now, the origins of this particular principle. It was the year 1891. The country was USA and the case was Wasberg versus Putney case in Wisconsin, USA. Now what happened over there? An incident took place in school in Wisconsin's Waukesha when a 12-year-old boy, Putney, kicked the 14-year-old boy, Wasberg, in the shin. Shin is basically that portion which is below your knee and in between your knee and the foot. That is the shin. So on the shin, it was hit without the knowledge that the latter had suffered a prior injury in that bodily region. The Wisconsin Supreme Court held that the injury was aggravated due to the kick, which caused means Wasberg's leg to become lame. Now, in this judgment, Justice William P. Leon said even though Putney did not intend to cause this degree of harm, the kick was an unlawful act as it took place after the teacher had called the class to order. So he concluded one who intends the act is also responsible for the subsequent harm, whatever harm is happening due to that act. So this was the origin of this, I would say, eggshell skull principle. A decade after in the UK, again this legal principle was adopted. Basically, the King's Bench, a part of English legal system, awarded damages to a pregnant woman who sustained severe shock and fell ill after the defendant's servant negligently drove a pair horse van into the public house where the woman was working behind the bar. Now, she claimed that this act caused her to give premature birth to a child because she was pregnant, and that child turned out to be an idiot, was born an idiot. So, already existing condition here in this case was pregnancy. That got aggravated due to which, premature birth had to be given, and this eggshell skull principle was applied. Now, the present case in India. Now, in 2005, Jyoti Devi went in to have her appendix removed in a hospital in Himachal Pradesh's Mandi district. The appendix was removed. She was suffering from pain. The appendix was removed. And after removal also, her abdominal pain was not able to subside. What followed was a 4-year ordeal and several hospital visits by that lady. Now, ultimately, doctors at the PGI of Medical Sciences, Postgraduate Institute of Medical Sciences, Chandigarh, it is a renowned hospital in Chandigarh, found that a 2.5 centimeter foreign body, a needle, was left behind in her abdomen, which needed to be surgically removed. They removed it surgically, and then she got relief. But what about this pain which she was suffering from for 4 long years and sheer negligence of the hospitals in the Mandi district? Now, the litigations and its aftermath. When Jyoti moved the district consumer forum for compensation, she was awarded rupees 5 lakh for medical negligence by the hospital in Mandi. When the hospital appealed against the order, the state consumer forum, now earlier was district forum, the hospital appealed in a higher forum, that is the state forum. The state forum reduced the compensation to rupees 1 lakh. She was not satisfied. She approached the National Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission, and the National Dispute Redressal Commission enhanced it to rupees 2 lakh. So from 5 lakh to 1 lakh to increase to 2 lakh. Now this case reached the Supreme Court. She reached the Supreme Court, which restored the district forum's decision. District forum decision was rupees 5 lakh, and said that the other two courts had awarded a paltry and unjust sum even while they applied the eggshell skull rule. All these applied this eggshell skull rule, but the Supreme Court said that the eggshell skull rule was applied wrongfully by these courts. Compensation we are giving you enhanced, but eggshell skull principle does not fit in this particular case. Now, the Supreme Court held that the eggshell skull rule would not apply in Jyoti's case, since the facts of the case do not indicate that she had a pre-existing vulnerability or medical condition when she went on to remove that appendicitis, because of which the victim may have suffered unusual damage. The court ordered that NCDRC had simply mentioned the rule but was silent as to how this rule applies to the present case. Now, the ruling stated that two factors necessitated enhancing the compensation. First, Jyoti had suffered pain for more than 5 years, and the case took more than a decade to be decided. So, on these two grounds, enhanced compensation was provided of 5 lakh rupees, but the eggshell skull rule as such is not applicable in Jyoti's case. So, it was wrongfully applied, and even the NCDRC was silent on how this principle is applicable in this present case. So, this is what this case is all about. Next is expanded program on immunization. This expanded program on immunization was adopted by the World Health Organization, and at that time in 1974 when it was adopted, making smallpox, I would say, vanish, or eradicating smallpox was on the horizon. Although smallpox as a disease had claimed multiple lives earlier, smallpox as a disease had already a vaccine in place for it. I think in 1798, or a very earlier, the vaccines was developed for smallpox, but still it was not eradicated. The expanded program on immunization had one of its objectives to increase the outreach of immunization programs, that despite the vaccines being there, it has not been able to get administered to the people, not been able to get delivered to the people. That is something which is uncalled for. This year we are celebrating 50 years since the launch of this expanded program on immunization, and hence this becomes very important for UPSC civil services. Now, what is basically expanded program of immunization? It was basically a global program adopted by WHO, but the aftermath of EPI, nearly every country across the world initiated its national immunization programs after that. When did India launch EPI? India launched EPI in 1978. It was renamed as Universal Immunization Program in 1985. And this Universal Immunization Program is now undertaken as well. We have this extended Universal Immunization Program, or I would say upgraded version of Universal Immunization Program now in place. Mission Indradhanush was also the name given to this Universal Immunization Program later on. Now the impact of EPI. What was the impact of EPI? Was the EPI actually impactful or not? Globally and in India, there were positive impacts. First of all, there was significant progress in the coverage of vaccination. More and more people were getting vaccinated, although the population was also increasing. But yes, vaccination coverage was also increasing. Have we achieved 100% coverage as a country? No. As per the National Family Health Survey, the 5th National Family Health Survey, we have achieved around 76% of immunization. National Family Health Survey, although is a sample survey, but yes, it is the case where we have achieved this much, 76% according to that survey. Now in 1974, there were vaccines to prevent 6 diseases. 5 decades later, there are vaccines against 13 diseases which are universally recommended. Vaccines against 17 additional diseases are recommended for a context-specific situation. There is research in progress to develop vaccines against nearly 125 pathogens. Many would prevent diseases prevalent in low and middle income countries. Now, vaccine development actually takes a lot of time. And, we should be thankful enough to the researchers who on war footing developed the corona vaccine in record time. Although, in yesterday's class, we talked about the effectivity of the Covishield vaccine. But yes, there are other vaccines also of COVID apart from Covishield which have till now been proven, successful. So in record time, we developed those vaccines, we administered the, vaccination program, and were able to tackle this global pandemic. And this impact of EPI was also witnessed. See, you can see, earlier for 6 diseases, now 13 diseases, 17 additional diseases are recommended for context-specific situation. This much development or this much impact of EPI has been there. Now the success story in detail, if we delve of this EPI, what has been the success story? The children with 3 doses of DPT, diphtheria, pneumonia and tetanus is the full form of DPT. A tracer indicator of coverage. Basically, if we talk about vaccine coverage, the first vaccine which we see is DPT vaccine. Ye laga hai, nahi laga. This is the primary vaccine. Now, this has been rising over the years. In the early 1970s, around 5% of the children in low and middle income countries had received 3 doses of DPT. There are 3 doses of DPT which have to be given. Only 5% received 3 doses, which increased to 84% in 2022 at the global level. And this vaccine DPT, when COVID started, I don't know now the authenticity of that report, but there was a report in a medical journal that those people who have taken DPT vaccines, all the 3 doses of DPT vaccines, are more safe in this pandemic-like situation as compared to those who have not taken all the 3 doses. But again, I'm saying that I'm not, completely sure about the aftermath of that report. I did not follow that after that. Now, smallpox has been eradicated. Polio has been eliminated from all but 2 countries. and many vaccine preventable diseases have nearly disappeared. In India, the coverage has increased every passing year, and in 2019 to 21, 76% of children received the recommended vaccines. Now, since the launch of EPI, studies have shown that vaccines have saved millions of lives and prevented billions of hospital visits and hospitalization. So here a lot of money has been saved also of the people. Not only of the people in those countries where government is responsible for delivering healthcare services, a lot of resources of the government has also been saved. So it is this way. Economic analysis have been estimated with respect to vaccines, and it is found that vaccines are highly cost effective interventions. Now, with every single dollar or even a rupee, if you consider, which has been spent on vaccination programs, it has ensured a 7 to 11 times increase. Means if $1 is getting spent, it is saving 7 to 11 dollars. So why not spend that much? Now, in nearly all low and middle income countries, including India, the immunization program remains a success among all government initiatives. Government initiatives, there can be government initiatives for sanitation, for healthcare, and in healthcare also there can be multiple, I would say, sub initiatives. One of the sub initiatives in healthcare is immunization programs. So among all the government initiatives overall, immunization is one such initiative which the government has successfully implemented. And there's a debate, private versus public in immunization. Generally, if we see, the healthcare services in any country is dominated by the private sector. In India also, if I talk about, 2/3 of the healthcare services delivery are done by the private sector. But when it comes to immunization, then, the public sector dominates. People are more relying on the public sector for immunizations or vaccines. In mixed health systems with both public and private sector, where they are both existing, immunization often remains the only health intervention with greater utilization from the government sector. In India, if I talk about, the share of private sector in overall health services is nearly 2/3. However, when we talk about immunization specifically, near 85 to 90% of all vaccines are delivered from government facilities. Even my child, I have, record it is that I have taken my child for vaccination to government hospitals only because it is believed to be better over there. And obviously it is free of cost. So that is also one more driving factor for people to go and get themselves vaccinated in the government setups. Like COVID vaccine, I believe that most of us have gone to the government centers. I myself, my entire family, and to the people I know, they've paid nothing for COVID vaccination. So vaccines have to be preserved at a particular temperature. They have to be, rolled out. There's a shelf life of those vaccines. And in government setups, since there is mass rollout of vaccination program, the shelf life is not met, means the vaccine does not complete the set shelf life. Before that only it gets administered. And, they are taking utmost precautions for maintaining the temperatures also at which they are stored. Such kind of preventions may not be taken in the private setup. So this is something which is to be known. Now there are challenges which obviously need to be addressed. Now in early 2023, the UNICEF State of the World Children Report was rolled out, and it revealed a concerning trend. That trend was, for the first time in more than a decade, the childhood immunization coverage had declined in 2021. In 2022, globally an estimated 14.3 million children were zero dose, did not receive any recommended vaccine, while another 6.2 million children were partially immunized. Over the years, the vaccine coverage in India has increased, no doubt about the fact. Nationally, state-wise, wherever you see, it has increased. However, there are persisting inequities in the coverage by geography. There are certain places in India where vaccines are not available, even in the government setups. Socioeconomic strata. Some very poor people, they are not able to go to the healthcare centers and get their children vaccinated. Children are getting born in them, but they are not vaccinated. And other parameters are there which demand urgent intervention as well. Other parameters like vaccine hesitancy, false perceptions developed by the people, and all. People often and wrongly believe that vaccines are only for children. But that is not the case. Children are more vulnerable to diseases. So the primary target of vaccines is children. But it is not only for the children. That needs to be understood. Nearly 225 years since the availability of the first vaccine against smallpox in 1798. It is 1798 when vaccine for smallpox was developed. Vaccines have always been available for individuals of all age groups, including the adults. Certain examples we have. The anti-rabies vaccine, cholera and typhoid vaccine developed between the 1880s and the 1890s were primarily for adults. The first vaccine ever developed in any part of the world against plague, 1897 it was from India and meant for individuals across all age groups. The BCG vaccine, which is against TB, was first introduced in a nationwide campaign in 1951 and was also administered to the adult population. Influenza vaccines are also given to the adults. So it is completely clear that these vaccines are not only for the children. This is a misconception which is spread among the population, and that is very wrong. We all, being adults, have taken COVID vaccine. Then why can't we take other vaccines also? It is not like ki, time gaya apna. No, it is not like this. What can we do to overcome these challenges? First is expanding immunization coverage and additional populations. We need to increase or include additional populations. Like, for example, very recently, the announcement on HPV vaccines, the human papilloma virus vaccines, which are basically found among the vaginal tract of the females. Now, this has been introduced by the government for adolescent girls, teenage girls in India. So, additional population got covered. Then, National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization, NTAGI. Basically, this is one such government agency which provides recommendations on the use of vaccines. They should start providing recommendations on the use of vaccine in adults and elderly. And when a government entity is, giving these kind of recommendations, it will definitely instill more confidence among the public. That should be the aim of this NTAGI. Then the prevailing myths and misconceptions about vaccines must be proactively addressed to tackle vaccine hesitancy, and for this purpose the government can undertake, or government can collaborate with specialized marketing agencies which can help spread the word in a more tactful manner and a more strategic manner. Various professional associations of doctors like community medicine experts, family physicians, pediatricians should work to increase awareness among the people, because people go to these doctors. The first, I would say, point of contact is these doctors, and then they should be increasing awareness among the public that get yourself vaccinated. Medical colleges and research institutions should generate evidence on the burden of disease in the adult population in India and accordingly recommend vaccinations. Now, the topic is over. Now we enter into the MCQs. The first MCQ is, consider the following and mark the correct statement. The eggshell skull principle is an international principle adopted in law. This principle originated in the UK. Which among this is true? The eggshell skull principle refers to which of the following? Overshadowing doctrine, due process of law. The offender will be liable for increased damage due to pre-existing conditions. D, none of the above. Very simple. I'm not expecting wrong answer for this particular question. In which year did India launch the universal immunization program? 1974, 78, 79 or 85? Very simple question, direct question. It was. Which of the following diseases is not vaccine preventable? Tuberculosis, cholera, AIDS and rabies. Among this you have to tell which is not vaccine preventable. And the last question is, consider the following statements and mark the correct one. Vaccine for smallpox was developed in 1798. The first vaccine developed for plague was in the USA. So among these, you have to answer which one is right. Relatively very simple questions today, and I'm expecting correct answers for all the questions. And with this, we come to an end of today's session. I will be meeting you tomorrow now with more such informative news pieces. Till then, you guys very well know what to do. I'm not repeating it today. Namaste. Jai Hind.